From the paranormal to the extraordinary, from the weird to the wonderful, this is On the Odd.
Psychic awareness is the understanding of human consciousness and the full potential of the mind when applied to everyday life. The meaning of the word psych comes from the Greek, translating as, quote, the breath of life. The word psychic also comes from the Greek, and it means, quote, of the soul, mental. Psychic awareness is literally a conscious comprehension of the life force or spirit within us and the power of the human mind. Paranormal or psychic abilities have long been feared and considered evil, dangerous, or simply superstition. But in recent years, science has been able to provide hard evidence to support the experience and claims of those with psychic powers. It also explains psychic phenomenon previously thought to be beyond rational understanding. Tonight's guest has had a large number of personal psychic and paranormal experiences. Please welcome to the show, June Lundgren. You are a psychic medium. You a demon seeker, which I have a lot of questions about. I'm sorry, a demon seer. I'm sorry about that. Big difference. And you basically work in the world of the spiritual and paranormal, and this is something that you've done, from what I understand anyway. Please correct any of this if it's wrong. It's something that you're comfortable doing. It's something that's really just a part of you, and it's something that's come natural to you.
Yeah, my grandmother, all the women in our family are gifted in one way or another, and she raised me for the first 5 years. So she taught me the basics and to feel comfortable in what I do and my gifts. And it's so much part of me, I don't even pay any attention. I was doing paranormal, quote unquote, ghost hunting long before there was such a thing.
So, how many books have you written? I have, I'm on Amazon and I'm looking, I see 9, but I don't know if, are those all of your books?
I have, let's see, I have A Medium's Guide to the Paranormal, Paranormal Encounters, Book 1 and 2, The Dark Side of the Paranormal, Out of Time, which is a paranormal romance, and Demon Seekers, The Journey Begins. Okay. And then I have 2 children's books that I wrote.
Okay, so it was you that I see here. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I have some of my stories in a couple of other books by Sammy Sands.
What are your children's books about? I actually used to work for Scholastic Entertainment in Manhattan, and I was just surrounded by children's books at all times, and I would see a lot of manuscripts come in, like just tons of them. And for you to even publish them is a big deal, because a lot of people just don't get to that level.
Yeah, I wrote the first one called Petal's Golden Wings in about 45 minutes. Oh. Years ago, and it actually ended up taking first place in the local writing event.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of put it away from me for a long time. And then when I started publishing some of my other books, I thought, well, let's revamp that one and bring it out. And it gets 5-star reviews. It's about a little fairy who has to find a gift for the Christ child. It's her, adventures to find the perfect gift. And the other one is called Susie's Big Adventure. There are actually 4 books. That's the first and the second rolled together. And it's about a little Springer Spaniel who comes to live on a farm in eastern Oregon. And it's her adventures with Thomas the rooster, Oscar the barn cat, and Pork Chop the pig.
That's awesome. Pork Chop the pig. That's terrible.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy in it and adventure, but yet, they're juvenile books. So it's enough adventure that the kids will be excited, but there's no, bad vibes coming out of it. And it teaches them, a good lesson about, no matter what you are, what race per se, whether you're a pig or a rooster or a chicken.
And I think
all belong together.
I think with animals, it's the best way to really portray that, especially for children. I have a 10-year-old, and thankfully he goes to a school that is very diverse, and he has friends of every kind, and so far so good, I think.
Yeah, it's a very good thing for kids. When I grew up, there were no kids of any other race around where I grew up. It was just your middle class white neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when I really got a taste of it was when I joined the military. And it's like, you see women from all other walks of life, and I never had, I was raised by my grandma not to be prejudiced. And I tell people, you know what? I got 7 nationalities in me. I have no room for prejudice. It just doesn't right in there.
It's like, you have no right.
Yeah, it's like I got no room for that.
Yeah, exactly. What branch of the military were you in?
I spent 2 years in the Army and 3 years in the Air Force.
Oh, wow. Thank you for your service. That's, those are definitely not easy things to do. I have friends in different branches of the military, and they go there and they become different people, and, that's really incredible.
Yeah, I wanted to get my nurse's training, and of course, come from a family of 6, they're not gonna have the money to put you through school. So there you go.
And actually, I do have questions about your nursing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just assume you deal with quite a bit of death, a lot of terrible things, actually. And my wife is a social worker for a nursing home.
Uh-huh.
And she deals with people who are they're there basically either to die or something. They broke a hip and they're 101 years old. And it's just sad that, she's at this point where she is kind of comfortable with death. And she's told me a number of stories. And I was telling her, because I had watched one of your interviews and I brought it up to her and we just got into this whole discussion about it.
Uh-huh.
And I was saying how you were talking about how you guide people.
Right.
And how they, they basically listen to you, and maybe there's some intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that, they know they can trust you. And, you're the nurse. There's a number of reasons why they can trust you. But you're telling them some very personal experiences. I also learned that in 1988 you had a motorcycle accident where for a period of time, not exactly just a short amount of time either, you died.
Yeah, I was clinically dead for 2 minutes. And I went to the other side, and my grandparents were there to meet me. And Michael was there, the archangel, and he said, listen, you're here for a reason. And the reason you're here is to find out who and what you are. And, because you just died, you're still stuck in your physical world mentality. And you say, well, I said, well, I'm me, I'm just me. And he's like, no. He says, I'm going to show you who you are. And so he made me review all of my physical world lives back to the core soul. And he says, this is who you are. He says, you're Ariel, the archangel.
Wow.
And I said, who's that?
I just like the title. You're an archangel. That's,
I've never heard of Ariel, Mm-hmm. And he's like, you're here to relive lives and learn to have compassion for mankind. You've been up here so long that you forgot how to have compassion for man. And he showed me a vision of aerial pulling a demon out of a woman, and a physical woman, and she died. And I guess that was the last straw. And God said, you're going to go back and relive physical lives until you can learn to have compassion for mankind. He said, this is life 131. I'm like, oh, gee, thanks. I'm that stubborn that I can't learn. And he says, yeah, you are. Like, thanks, appreciate that.
That takes my time.
Yeah, my grandpa said, you're not supposed to be here. You need to go back. I said, yeah, I know. And he says, you're going to have a son in less than a year. And I'm like, I had just started dating my husband, so I was like, no way, So when I came back to my body, the police officer leaning over me, it's like, oh, thank God you're breathing again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And then almost a year later, my son was born.
Wow. So when this happened, after this happened, did you get right on the motorcycle and keep riding? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I ended up with a skull fracture,
Ooh.
right radial head fracture, but it didn't mess up my leather jacket.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
Motorcycle jackets are built that way.
And
it actually look cooler with the scuffs, probably.
Yeah, the bike was no good. I had two bikes. It was a GL 425 Suzuki with full fairing, and it was aqua with wall-to-wall chrome. And she hit me so hard she embedded the foot brake into the engine housing.
Wow.
I flew off the other side. And I actually had a vision of it happening a week before it happened. But I thought it was for my brothers, because my brothers all ride. Mm-hmm. So, and they ride like idiots, just like crazy people. So I told my mom, I said, tell them to be careful, and then 1 week later it's me.
Now, prior to this, like you said, you would have, I'm going to call them things, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You would have a premonition, or you would have a vision of these things. Like you said, you thought it was going to be your brother. Mm-hmm. Do you feel as though the experience of crossing over and spending time there with these specific people, or specific entities, do you feel as though you obtained knowledge from that experience, that or some level of internal something that clicked, where you were able to come back, and although you had this gift, it sounds like your whole life, do you feel as though the gift was maybe more fine-tuned after this?
Yeah, I've always had abilities. I've always known where negatives were, and I just, I never confronted them because I didn't have the know-how at that time. And so, I would know where they were and what they were and just kind of avoid them. And my abilities were pretty good. But once I crossed, my abilities grew 10 times as strong as they were before. Plus, with my connection with Michael became even stronger than it had been before. And so it's like, when you go cross, you understand finally that on the other side, thought becomes reality. It's like, that's the only way to put it, to make people understand, human beings understand, is thought becomes reality. Because before you even get the thought out of your, produced in your head, it's there. You're there. You could say China, and you're like, before you get the word out, you're there. It's the way it is. And they told me, on this side, thought can become reality too, if it's strong enough and it's for the greater good of the individual or the people.
Now, have you ever experienced somebody who is extremely fearful of crossing over, of dying? They could probably feel the time is here. These are their last moments.
Oh, yeah.
And you basically guide them to this. And is there an immediate type of reaction to that?
I have the ability to hold their hand and help them to see what I saw when I crossed. So, they immediately lose their fear.
Gotcha.
Of the crossing. It's like I had a friend who I love. He's a great medium. Love him to death. And he went with me one time for a removal And he said, I want to see what you see. And I said, no, you don't want to see what I see. I said, because I see evil in its pure form. I said, and it's not for everybody to look at, to look upon, to deal with. And ultimately, he said, I really want to see it. And I'm like, okay, so hold my hand. And I showed him what I see. And he's like, oh, my God. He says, there's two, and then one of them's huge, and they're coming at us. I said, don't worry about it. And then the other one, he's like, what is that? They're speaking. He says, it's like high-pitched frequency. And he said, I can't make out the words, but I get, like, the intent. I said, they speak in Aramaic, which is the old language.
Yeah, it's before Hebrew.
Yeah, I said, my brain is hardwired to understand what they're saying. It's not exactly what they're saying. And I can communicate with them and tell them exactly where to go and how to do it.
My son's name is Aramaic. It's Ramiel.
Mm-hmm.
And which I believe means thunder of God.
Yes.
And he cried really loud. He was a loud kid, loud baby. But he loves that. He loves the fact that his name represents something like that. But he's a real quiet kid. It doesn't at all.
Yeah.
Right now he's a quiet kid, but maybe in the future it will reflect upon his personality.
Oh yeah, as he grows and becomes more self-aware and stuff. It's like, well, Ariel means Lion of God.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yeah, very little is known about Ariel the Archangel, but I had to look her up. When I died and I got back, I'm like, at that time the internet was just like becoming common. And I looked her up, and I'm like, I couldn't find much on her. And, everybody wants to spell it Ariel. And, she says, no, that's not how it's spelled. It's Auriel.
Oh, okay, like oral.
Yeah, but she pronounces it Ariel. And she says, they mispronounce my name all the time. She says, they misspell it, mispronounce it. I'm like, don't worry about it. Take a chill pill or something, because over the years, Michael has taught me how to separate myself from my physical body, and she comes forward, and it's a whole different personality when she comes forward. People say that I never knew it because I've always too busy removing demons. And when I first started training people, they're like, oh my God, you realize that your eyes turn white and that your face drops to about 20 years old?
Wow.
And voice changes, and I'm like, since I don't have a mirror and I'm a little busy, no, I don't pay no attention.
Whew.
But they caught it on film and stuff, but I hate having my picture taken.
Well, it's not exactly, some things you just don't have to be recorded. It's, we live in such a world where everybody's got their phone out.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, okay, we don't have to record everything. Especially when it's something as personal as that. Now, your website states that you are a demon seer.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could explain what that is, because it sounds scary. I mean, I'm not even jesting. Like, I have an idea maybe of it after listening to what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I just love to hear in your words exactly what that is and what it entails.
Well, a lot of people say, call themselves demonologists. But all that means really is the study of demonic entities and that sort of thing. But they'll say that they're demonologists and, say, well, I can remove this demon and blah, blah, blah. And I've run into some fake ones over the years, and it really pisses me off when I do because they're taking money from people. And my grandmother says to me, she's been dead since 79. She said, really? She said, don't call yourself a demonologist. You hate it so much. Just call yourself what we did in the old country. My grandmother's Irish. So we called you a demon seer. You can see them, communicate with them, and get rid of them, and in some cases kill them. So, that's what we used to call in the old days, a demon seer.
Hmm. Now, are demons, I'm going to guess they're just like people in the sense of their uniqueness, but can they be I mean, can you speak to a demon and kind of convince them to just leave? Like, kind of without threatening, I guess.
Very few times does that happen. Usually when I get called in, it's usually because they've been, attacking people or making somebody's life a living hell. And it's gotten to the point where these people are so desperate to get rid of these things. And Ariel has no love of demons whatsoever and no patience for them. She'd just as soon, kill them as look at them. But she cannot just do that. She has to get permission expressly from God for that. I mean, what she does basically is send them back where they belong. And that's, which is all she cares about was getting rid of them, from the physical world. They don't need to be here. So 9 times out of 10, they'll just be, put back where they belong. And it's usually Michael's usually with me, and sometimes Gabe's comes along, and Raphael. Just depends upon how many there are there. And so we just, send them back. They enjoy it too much. They really enjoy it too much.
So, all right, if we're talking about demons and they're being cast out or they're being sent elsewhere, excuse me, we're talking about hell. I mean, we're talking, or at least a level of it.
Yeah, back into the darkness, basically.
And I even jumped over the fact that, we're also saying that heaven exists.
Right.
And it's something as I get older, I'm kind of accepting it. I mean, It's not my choice. It's not,
right.
You know what I mean? It's like one of these things where it's not up to me that somebody wins or loses a basketball game.
Exactly.
It either it is or it isn't. And I can either, it's just the way it is. And,
having been to the other side,
right. Yes.
Over there, Michael took me by the hand and said, he took me over this, like, I guess I had to see it in a form that my physical brain would understand. So he brought me over to this cloud bank and then waved his hand, and this window opened up. It looked like a bay window. The clouds parted and there was like this bay window. And he says, look down there and tell me what you see. And I looked down through the window and I saw the earth. And I saw everyone that was alive in the earth at that moment in time. And he said, do you see the strings that are coming from each one of those, the threads? I'm like, yeah. He said, the ones that are lit up is the ones that have made the soul connection. The ones that are still dark have not made the soul connection yet. And I said, okay. I said, but if heaven exists, what about hell? And he says, come over here. And he took me by the hand, and we went a few feet, and he waved his arm over what I would call a cloud floor. I mean, there's no other word for it. And this big pit opened up, and it was black, and there were horrible screams coming out of it, and souls reaching up to try to get out. And then he waved his arm again, and it closed. I said, okay, alrighty then.
Right.
I give.
Yeah, I mean, that's horrifying. I mean, that's exactly what we read in the Bible, right? Or the Torah.
Yeah. He says, what you see is the only way in which your physical brain can understand what we're talking about. He says, what you see is an image that you can understand. He said, if you're up here and you've crossed completely and you're not going back, he said, then you see it differently. He said, but right now you're still in your physical world brain, and that's the only way that you can comprehend what you're seeing. I'm like, well, it's good enough for me, huh? Okay, I'll go down there.
I'm wondering if you're at a point where you understand why people go to heaven or hell, because a lot of people, and I think I'm gonna point my finger a little bit at, say, the born again Christians, and I'm not gonna say anybody's right, I'm not gonna say anybody's wrong, but I feel like it's been explained to me that unless you accept the Holy Spirit, you're not going to heaven. And that's kind of their belief system.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I personally think, all right, so what you're saying is this little old lady who goes to Catholic church, she believes in Catholicism. She goes and prays all the time, and she's a totally moral person. She's going to go to hell, Like, that's what you're saying. I mean, not you, but...
Yeah, right.
And that
Not
doesn't
me.
make sense to me. Moral, good people should go to
Religion
heaven.
is a man-made thing. Wasn't created by God. It's a man-made thing.
Sure.
We thought it up in order to put God into a box, in order to understand it. Well, if you do this, and of course, if you stop and think about it, when the Old Testament was written, it was a different time, and people had different beliefs, and they needed black is black and white is white, and there are no in-betweens back then. That's the mentality of the people at that time.
Sure.
And then the New Testament was created for people that are later and had shades of gray. It's like, before you've heard it said that, if, whatever, my brain just went blank. But, you've heard it said an eye for an eye. But I tell you, to turn the other cheek. So there, he's like trying to say, listen, revenge is not a good thing. You don't try to get back at somebody. Revenge is mine, saith the Lord. Because every time you try to get back at somebody, you get slapped upside the head. So really,
that's true.
It does really work. It's like a boomerang. It comes back and slaps you in the head. But I don't. When I was growing up, my grandma was Pentecostal.
Okay. That's pretty much like a born again Christian, right?
Yeah. But yet my grandma was not quite. She was raised Pentecostal. Let's put it that way. But my grandma was more spiritual than anything. She didn't really ascribe to a certain religion per se in some ways, because she said there are so many hypocrites. She said, I read my Bible every night. She said, I pray for understanding. And she said, where, like it says in the Bible, where one or more are gathered in my name, there shall I be. She said, I don't need to go to church. Some people need that. She says, but I read my Bible, I pray about it, and I understand. And she says, I feel that if you try always to do good and to not hurt anybody on purpose and not cause anyone any pain on purpose, she said, then that's what life is all about.
And that's the person, I think she falls into that category. This is a moral person who's doing her best.
Yep.
And we all screw up. Come on. I mean, we're mortals.
We're human. We're going to.
But as long I personally feel, and it's just my own personal opinion, that as long as we also have regret for these things, maybe we did intentionally hurt somebody. We all have. I know I have. And if you can come to grips with it by thinking about it and regretting it, and maybe taking the steps to not to do it next time.
Right.
You've learned a lesson, I feel. And I just feel as though it's so much more complex than believing in just the Holy Spirit. Or I'm Jewish. I grew up Jewish. My closest friends were Baptist. So I was like the white Jewish kid in the total black Baptist church. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And it was fun. It was great. It was a very musical church. And it was fine, I was accepted, and everybody was great. And it's one of these things that I would sleep over their house all the time, and if I was there on Sunday morning, I'm going to church. I don't care what you were raised as.
Yeah, Aaron, who is he's the founder of Northwest Paranormal, which is the first group that I belonged to, and I still belong to it, even though I have my own group, Ghosts and Girls Paranormal, because we specialize. We kind of branched off.
That's Ghosts. I'm sorry, Ghosts and Girls or Ghost and Girls?
Ghosts and Girls Paranormal.
Okay. I'll put a link to everything in the show notes, but I'd like to make a note of these type of things because
we deal with negative entities. That's our specialty. But I also belong to the Northwest Paranormal. So we do some fun investigations, which don't involve negatives, which are for us our vacation. But the founder of it, Aaron, is a friend of mine, and he's an ordained minister, but he grew up Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, he's been recently coming with me. He had some fear about the darkness and the dark ones and stuff. And I told him, I called him one day. I said, listen, you got to go with me to this case. I said, because God said that you need to get rid of the fear. You fear the darkness, and you can't fear the darkness. I said, because if you do, you'll never win. And so he's like, I said, I want you to come as a minister. And so he did, and I think it's probably one thing that he'll never ever forget. It was a exorcism.
Mm.
There were 11 entities in this woman. So Ariel was out for 3 solid hours, which she's never been out that long before. But in the end, there was one left in her that was not wanting to go. And so Ariel says, I'll offer you, I'll ask Jesus to come. And if you want to go home, it's this little minion negative. And I said, if you want to really go home, I said, I'll ask him to come. And Aaron and my friend Wendy, they're on either side, I'm facing them. And then suddenly Jesus comes and they like part. One goes to one side, one goes to the other. And he told me later, he says, I've been a minister a long time, he said, and I've always known that Jesus and God were there. He said, but until today, I've never seen it. He says, I saw his hand and his arm reach out towards the creature. But the creature was too afraid to take it, because, it's always been lied to. It's a demon. What do you want,
Right.
It's lived in darkness. I said, Ariel said, so be it. She says, I summon Lucifer. And so this, Lucifer comes walking down the hall. And both these guys are like, you could tell they were like, oh my God. And I see him as a dark being and with a face of pure evil. But as he walks closer to where I am, Ariel bows, but not out of, subjugation, but more out of respect for what he is. And he said to the creature, I'll come back for you. And then he turned around and walked and disappeared down the hallway. And so, that was the last one. And I told the woman, I said, listen.
That's a remarkable story.
I know that they still can't believe it to this day, because they both, after we left, both of them turned to me and said, at first, Aaron says, I thought, are you out of your mind? Some Lucifer? And I said, listen, I didn't do it. Ariel did it. I said, besides, really, that was the only call. And he said, then in the next second, he said, I understood and I knew that I respected you and I knew that you wouldn't, do this lightly or to hurt anyone. And so he said, and then to see Jesus's hand, his arm and his shoulder and his hand come out, he said, I'll never forget that. I'll never, ever forget that.
How could you forget something as, it's beyond the word supernatural. It's just, that's amazing.
He said, I couldn't look at Lucifer. He said, something was preventing me from looking in his face. I said, it's good for you not to look in his face.
Yeah.
You want to see what I see in his face.
Can I ask you a few questions about exorcisms?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this person had 11 entities within her. I'm going to guess they just caused havoc and chaos in her life.
Oh, yeah.
And her family's life and everything. How long does physically, how long does an exorcism take? From, when you get there to call, this one more demon,
This is the first one I've ever done. And I didn't go in it with any intention of doing an exorcism. I assumed from what she was telling me that these things were just around her and attached to her. And I wasn't thinking it was any more than, one or two of these things. But then you get there and I can see them all. And her eyes turn black and I'm like, oh, really? Come on, give me a break. And so you just roll up your sleeves and Ariel just holds on, touches her, grabs her head and starts pulling them out. And they can, my friends can see them leave. And it took 3 solid hours. And it's never, when I go in to remove a negative, it doesn't take me but a couple minutes and I'm out of there. She comes out the minute she senses them, and Ariel does, and then it's on and she takes care of business and it's gone. This is totally different because of the fact that there's a human involved and you can't go around, hurting humans like she did. That's the reason she has to come back. So she has to be very, very careful. And Lucifer said afterwards, I said, Ariel said to him, you owe me now. And Lucifer said, I do. And he walked away. And I said, good, I'm going to hold you to that. Because if I ever need a favor, you're going to owe me that one.
Imagine having something like that over his head.
Well, the thing is, this creature had been hiding from him. He was, contrary to popular belief, Lucifer doesn't know where every one of his minions are. But this guy had been sent to do a job and never did the job. And so he knew he had better hide out. Well, he was hiding inside this woman, and Lucifer couldn't find him. So that's why he owed Ariel a favor.
So why 11 spirits? I mean, do they glom onto the weak to hide, to
They do.
to just mess with people, or
She had mental issues, mental illness issues as well. And so, that leaves you in a weakened state, and they're attracted to people in weakened states, people with mental issues, people with, drug addiction, people of weak faith, even people of strong faith in some cases. It just depends. The trouble is, people will be, I've run into it too many times, they'll be ghost hunting, quote unquote, or doing paranormal investigations.
Right, they're tourists.
Yeah. And they'll be doing something like that. And then they'll get an attachment. And they're like, they don't even realize they have the attachment until their life starts going to hell in a handbasket. The MO of these guys is once they attach themselves to you, that your health goes downhill, your finances go downhill, they want to isolate you, you lose your family and friends. These are all things that they do. And if you're going on an investigation and you see like a shadow person, right? You don't say, hey, Joe, look at that, there's a shadow person. Because if you say that, it sees you. If you ignore it and walk away, it won't notice you. But the minute that you notice it and it knows that you've noticed it, then it's on. Then you draw attention to yourself.
That's interesting.
And, demons are like sharks. They have pilot fish, that go around with them. These are I call them little minion guys, creepy crawly guys. They're ugly little spuds, but they always hang with them. They're the gopher guys, go for this. Go find me somebody to latch onto or whatever,
The minions, basically.
Yeah, I call them that. My friend Wendy, who I've trained to help me with these things, her granddaughter calls them onions.
Now you're very experienced with this, but are you afraid at all of, or have you ever been afraid of having these demonic energies or entities attach themselves to you and affect your personal life?
Nope.
Okay.
You can't. If you're dealing with these things, you can't have absolutely no fear, no doubt. You have to have a strong faith and a belief in yourself as well. Because the minute I know a demon, I know it's coming before anybody else knows it's coming. I feel it's here's cheesy for you. It's like Star Wars. I feel a change in the force, a distraction in the force. Something changes. The vibrations change. And I know that there's something coming. It's just a matter of when the other shoe will drop. And so you cannot have any doubt at all. And I asked Michael one time, I said, why does it take these priests so long to remove, something, or to go into a house and do a removal? I don't understand why it should take them that long. And Michael said, listen, he says, if the person has any doubt at all, they may have the faith that will move a mountain, but if they have any doubt in themselves, and if they can do it, or in what they're doing, it's never going to happen. And these things know that because they look into your mind. They look in your head and they see your weaknesses, and they play on them.
Now, you always hear about people, I'm getting a new apartment or a new house. The first thing I'm going to do is smudge with sage. And although I think it's a decent practice, it's definitely not a cure-all.
No, absolutely not.
I think it's, if anything, it makes you feel moved in. But I'm just kind of curious, is there anything that you would recommend, whether it be a prayer, burning something, just saying something, or...
Okay, if you move into an apartment, before you even move in, you ask for God's blessing upon the apartment and all who dwell within, and then you ask that any and all negative energy be released from the apartment in the name of Jesus Christ and God Almighty, or whatever deity you believe in. And that would be the first thing. If you start having activity, you have to sit back and look at it. Is it like just somebody moving something harmless, or somebody, just kind of walking by and looking at you, that type of thing. If that's something like that, then it's probably just a ghost that wants some help. That's all, just help them cross over. No big deal.
Right. You don't need to burn the house down for that.
No, you don't need that. But if you see like a shadow person or persons, if you start getting attacked, you start getting scratched or tapping, it's the mocking of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. So if you have tapping and waves of 3 or scratches and 3s and things like that, then you've got something negative there. And the last thing you want to do is smudge, because it pisses them off. And it ramps up the activity. They're like, oh, you're trying to get rid of us? I don't think so. That means you admit that it's there. You've drawn attention to yourself.
Like, I'm a big incense burner. I've always been. It has to do, I think, a little bit with my meditations. And I burn Nag Champa, which maybe you've heard of. And I don't know, I personally feel like I lived in a house that I felt as though had something going on. I know that a young girl had tragically died in that house as well. But the thing is a big storm came, and all the energy, like you said, the force, you feel something.
Yep.
Hurricane Sandy hit here. You probably read about Hurricane Sandy.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And I lived in a different house right before we bought this house. And we were in a town called Seaford Harbor. And the water came about 100 feet from our house and then went back. Mm-hmm. And a tree fell, so our power went out. And we're like, all right, let's get out of here. We come back the next day, and I'm thinking, just the air is fresher. Like, it's as though... I feel as though it's possible that the salt water rose in the water table in the soil,
right,
and helped free this, stuck spirit. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
I
felt
it's always been used for purification and protection. Yeah,
like, I don't feel I could do what you do at all, but I feel as though I'm sensitive to it. But thankfully, I'm aware of it as well.
Which is good.
And I have a healthy fear of things. So I stay away from things I've owned a Ouija board in the past, but I've never used one. There's something about it that I just won't, it's like smoking. I'm just not going to do it.
Well, it's like anything. People ask me about that all the time. They're like, what about, Ouija boards? And I said, listen, Ouija boards, scrying, tarot cards, using a pendulum. I said, having a seance, all of those things open a portal. It opens a door to the other side. The problem is people don't understand that before you use it, per se, for divination or whatever you're going to do, you ask for a blessing upon the communication so that nothing negative be coming through. And once you finish reading your cards or playing with the Ouija board or whatever, then you ask for God's closure of the portal and his blessing on it. See, because people will do that and not bother to close the portal. So all this stuff comes through. It's like a swinging door. It allows anything, whether it be positive or negative, to come through. And that's what happened in the Shanghai tunnels. I was asked to go down there. My paranormal group was asked to go down. So I went down. I'd never been there before, and I've lived here for, 30, 40 years. And so we had dinner up in the restaurant up above it. And the minute I parked about a block away, I knew there was a negative down in the tunnels. Like I said, I'd never been there before. Right. So we went down afterwards, and I knew where they were and what they were. But I ignored them so that they didn't know that I knew they were there. And we walked through there and stuff, and we came out, and I said, listen, I'm going to have to come back and remove these things. I said, who has been doing seances down here and using, a witch board? And the guy that's overseeing it pulled me aside and said, nobody knows about that. I said, well, I know about that. I said, somebody's been using it. And he said, yeah, those people that have the other side of the building are letting some people come down and do that on the other side of the tunnels. And I said, well, that needs to stop. I said, I'll have to come in and take these things out. There's one of them now. I said, but there'll probably be more when I come back, because I couldn't come back for a week because Wednesday was my only day off. Mm-hmm. And so I came back the following week and with my group, and I told them, I said, listen, I'm laying down this black salt. All of you have to stay within the circle of the black salt. Otherwise, I'm not responsible for what's going on. So they all stayed in there, and I don't have to be in the line, the protection line. And so I'm out there, and they hear the growling, and then I let Aaron use my camera, and he's like, drops my camera, scared the lemon. Drops my camera. I'm like, really?
That scares you.
I'm like, so I finish removing them, and like, you had to drop my camera.
Well, things cost money.
It's like, it's okay. I set it back up. It's okay. I'm like, whatever. I had to go down there 2 other times to remove them, because I told him, I said, if I have to come down there again, I said, I'm going to charge you for it. I never charge for removals, but I'm going to charge you for it because you know better.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have to keep coming back, I mean, the least they can do is that. Yeah. Now, the Shanghai tunnels go back to the 1800s, right?
Yeah, true.
So, I mean, these, there could be spirits down there for 200 years or more.
There is. They found a new section, and I told them, I said, don't open up. There's a board down there, and it's on the ground, and it goes down. I said, don't open that. And they're like, why? I hadn't even been in the place. I said, just don't open it, because you'll be sorry what's in there. So I don't know if they opened it or not. I'm not even dealing with it.
The house that I live in now, it's about 100 years old. It's not exactly the oldest house in the world, but it's a little old. This is the first house I've ever lived in where I don't feel any type of negativity, or I don't have the, heebie-jeebies if I go in the basement, or
That's good.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
It was a well-loved home.
Yeah, and what's funny is I did the history and I found all the people's names and I did a whole write-up of the history of this house and all the people that have lived here. And it appears everybody kind of just was normal, like just regular lives.
And they loved the house and took care of the house.
Yeah, so that's
the thing.
I'm happy about that. So I'm sorry, I had something that I was just looking at and I scrolled up.
I just did a stint on Ghost Adventures a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it'll be out in October. It's a 4-part special called Graveyards of the Pacific.
Oh, I'm just jotting that down.
And we had, it was in Astoria. One of them, my friend Wendy, who does the Ghosts and Girls with me, she's an empath. So she walked through one of the lighthouses, the Iwako Lighthouse. And she did that one, and then my friend Aaron and his wife was also on there with the investigation of the Commodore, where we had all gone down in February and investigated these places.
Now, did you say Astoria, like here in New York, or
Astoria, Oregon?
Oh, okay. We have an Astoria here in Queens.
Because that's where
near the water, kind of.
That's where the movie The Goonies was filmed.
Oh, okay.
And Halloween Town was filmed in St. Helens, Oregon.
Okay.
But
yeah, I always think everything is New York. I mean, that's my style.
And then I did the Norblad. They came, very nice guys. The guy, Zach interviewed me. He's like, "So what is a demon seer?" and all this, and I'm like, I told him and stuff, and
that show's been on for quite some time now, right? It's basically the leading show in the I'm going to say industry.
Yeah. I told him, I said, listen, he says, are my people going to be, what's down there? I said, there's a very powerful negative down there. And he says, are my people going to be okay? Because he's really concerned about, his crew and everything.
Sure.
I told him, I said, yeah. I said, as long as I'm down there, they're fine. I said, I have this thing, I said, cornered. And I put it into a kind of a bubble, so a protection, so that it can't lash out at anybody. And I was telling him about a couple of my friends who wanted to see what I say, and he's like, "You're kidding, right?" I'm like, "No." And so we get down there and we start the investigation, and he's like, "Is it here?" I said, "Yeah, look over there in the corner. Aim your cameras over there. You want to see it?" And he's like, "I want to see what you see." I said, "I told you, you don't want to see what I see." And he's like, "No, I really do." I said, "Okay, you can't say I didn't. You can't say I didn't warn you." So he gave me his hand, and I said, "Okay, here you go." And then I funneled what I see, the image of the demon, through me and into him. And first he's like, "Oh, this is cool," It's like, he said, at first I felt really good and warm and everything. He said, and then I saw this black curtain come down or up, something like that. He said, and then I saw it. And he said, and that's when, he said, I felt a electrical shock go through me, and that's why I let go of your hand. And I said, how's your back feeling? And he's like, oh, it's killing me. I said, yeah. So these things attack your weak spots. That's your weak spot. You have
wow.
And he's like, I told him, I said, I got to take that sight away from you before you leave. I said, you can't. We went and finished the investigation down through the rest of the basement, but I told him, I said, listen, you can't keep this sight. I said, you'll be sorry for that. I said, because nobody should see what I see. And he's like, at first he didn't want to do it and didn't want to remove it. And then he's like, so I go upstairs, and next thing I know, my friend Wendy's saying, he's running out of the building. I'm like, okay. And into a waiting car in the backseat of a waiting SUV, and took off. And I'm like, oh shit, I hope he's okay. And he's like, and I told the producer, I said, listen, we're gonna get ready to go. I said, just let me know, just text me, and I'll make sure that I can come and take the sight from it. If not, I'll just remove it from a distance. And we were like putting our coats on, getting ready to go. And then he says, "Oh, Zach just texted me. He wants you to come outside and take it away."
Wow.
It been more than 10 minutes. I'm like, okay.
You know, when you mentioned the black curtain, it's funny because I wrote down to bring up dark curtain rabbi. So that's something I read a long time ago, and I'm still seeking a source for where I read it. But they used to separate the higher rabbis who would do, the raising of the dead, and there's different levels, I guess.
Yeah.
And they would separate them with black curtains. And I wrote it down, and then you said it. So that was very odd.
You know why they do that, don't you?
Not 100%, no.
There are 7 veils between the worlds. And those black curtains separate the veils between the worlds.
Righty. Yeah, it's always been a haunting kind of mental image to me. And, I couldn't imagine. I personally don't think that is something I would want to experience. The thing that you warned him about, and but sometimes knowing is better than not knowing.
Yeah, but it's like I'm sure Michael tells me he's still having some nightmares to do with that. But he tweeted out, this is one place I'll never forget, and I'm like thinking to myself, yeah. Where else can you go to see a demon in its true form?
Now, in one of your interviews, you mentioned something that really stuck with me, and I kept thinking about it. And that's, you were saying that if somebody has a crucifix, they feel as though, I'm fine, totally fine. But having the symbol of the crucifix is not enough. No. You were saying that it needs to have the Christ figure on it.
It needs to have the image of Christ, not a abstract.
Well, that
image.
Brought me to think, well, is that going to protect me being a Jew? Or
yes.
Is it the icon? Is it the symbolism that holds the power? Or is it okay? I just didn't know if it was in me or if it was in the icon.
Remember, I told you that in this world also thought becomes reality. It's the intention behind the placing of the crucifix, or the showing of the crucifix, or your faith in that particular crucifix. It's the intention, not so much the actual act of it or the inanimate object of it. It's all about your intention. You have the intention. This is my protection. Nothing can harm me with this. And if you have the absolute faith, fine. In my book, The Dark Side of the Paranormal, I close it by telling people, I wish that I could tell you that, these things like the black salt, the crucifix, the prayers. I said, I wish I could tell you for 100% certain that all these things will protect you 100%. And I can't. I mean, I would be lying to you if I said that. But the thing is, if you have the intention and the pure faith and, absolute faith in yourself and in God, then that goes a long way to protect you. I mean, the black salt that I make, it was created from a recipe given to me by God. He said, you're going to be removing, when he told me I had to start doing this stuff, he's like, you're going to start removing the demons. You need to protect the physical body of these people. He said, I want you to create this black salt, and I'll bless it at each step of the making of it. So that's what I do. And it protects. I have not ever seen it fail. If it's laid down and the way it's supposed to be laid down and the prayer that's supposed to be given for it, then it has yet to fail. And this is 20 years later.
So with the black salt, you just have, I guess you mix it in a tremendous batch of it, right? It's what makes it black? Do you mind telling me?
The typical black salt is salt and charcoal.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's your typical black salt. My black salt is not that way. The recipe that God gave me was sandalwood powder, because they use sandalwood in exorcisms, and of course charcoal, and not just any salt. This is unrefined Dead Sea salt, and then it is sage that's burned. Everything that I use in it is soaked in holy water, and then also sweet grass. I use sweet grass in the manufacturing of it too. Every part of this is set, soaked in holy water and set in the sun to dry, so that at each step it takes me about a week to make it.
Yeah, making this type of thing is easily not something you can just do a batch of it in an hour. There's no way.
Yeah, it's just it takes me about a week to make it, and God blesses it at every step, and then the archangel that's inside of me put some of her angelic energy into it. So that's why it's that's why it works so well.
Now, as a mortal, which is, when it all comes down to it, you're immortal.
Yep.
Is there anything on the spiritual plane that you fear? And it's a weird question to ask. It's kind of almost a goofy question, but I'm just wondering, have you seen it all, kind of? It sounds to me you've seen a lot of the scary stuff, and you've dealt with it very well.
I don't have a fear of anything, but when my grandma raised me, and she said, listen, she said, always keep an open mind. You never stop learning, and never think that you know it all, because just when you think that you know it all, something comes along and changes, and then you have to start all over again. So when I wrote the book, The Dark Side, I tell them, first the opening thing says, forget everything you think you know about the dark side, because you don't know it. Until you've dealt with it, day in and day out, you haven't a clue. And even then, you never know everything. It's constantly changing. It's like I encountered a banshee for the first time about 6 months ago. And then recently I dealt with an incubus and a succubus. And it's like, really, guys? Can you give me a break? I don't fear anything. The only thing I can say that I really fear is not being able to be with my son in the physical world. I think that's the thing I fear the most. I actually had, when I did the Ghost Adventures thing, I was 4 days out from having cancer surgery.
Oh, wow.
Colon cancer. And, the guys on the other side told me, he says, listen, there's not going to be any cancer in the pieces that they took out. They said, it's going to be fine. I had a polyp that was cancerous, not precancerous, cancerous.
Okay.
And I said, okay. But, there's still the medical side of me. It says, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. So, I didn't really fear it. But I'm like, hey, there's no way I'm having chemotherapy, and there's no way I'm having radiation.
Right. I mean, underneath all of this, yeah. I mean, underneath all this, you're June. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're a person with, feelings and everything. You know what I mean? It's
and then it all came back negative. Absolutely no cancer cells.
Thank God. That's
but
wonderful.
It's like, that's the only thing. Like I said, that's the only thing I fear is leaving my son. But I'll still be on the other side and giving him hell, of course.
Yeah, I think as a parent, you always fear that type of thing.
Yeah. I know my death, though. I've seen when I died, I asked God after that. I said, listen, I want to see my death. I want to see the vision of my death. And he says, my gift to you. And I saw myself at like 92, 93 years old, going to sleep and not waking up.
God bless. I mean, that's amazing.
I'm like,
that's the way you go. I mean, that's the best way to go. I
said, okay, I'm good. All right, I can torture my son, clear up that time. I'm 93. Okay, I'm good.
I just wanted to leave it off on something that my wife was telling me, because she's very often in the room with people as they're dying,
Yep.
And she's like, the thing that's pretty consistent is them knowing.
Yes.
And they start just, we could talk about a full dementia patient who's screaming about racism and being kind of just a tremendous pain in the ass.
Yep.
But it all goes away at the last moment.
It does.
And they're like, that's my father.
Yeah,
well, that's,
it's because something comes for them, and the soul knows that. The soul knows it's time, it's death.
And
it knows.
I'm sorry.
It's the soul is given. There are certain things that are set in stone. The time you come in, the time you leave, and the method in which you leave. Those things are all set in stone. There's no such thing as heaven can wait type of thing, because it doesn't happen. But they all see whoever comes for them. Their dad's left, whoever was closest to them, they'll come for them and say, come on, what you waiting for? Come on.
It's time, yeah. She said she's had people die with a smile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's also had people just, they're there one moment like a light bulb, and then they're just not there.
Yeah, kicking and screaming. What people fail to understand is I work internal medicine, and I work with a lot of elderly patients with dementia, Alzheimer's, and you get those people, and they'll have those moments of absolute clarity, and then the rest of it is like, and I can't even know how to walk. I don't know how to feed myself or anything like that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because the soul leaves. When the soul leaves, only the shell is there. And it exists between time. In dementia patients, the soul comes and goes. And that's why you have that moment of absolute clarity is when the soul comes back in. It comes and goes all the time. I've seen it happen, over the years. It's like, oh, okay, so you're heading out again, or, and you come back in.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I never even thought of it like that.
Yeah, I've actually seen it happen. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's
go. All right.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time tonight and speaking with me, June. There's a million other things I could ask you, but I guess if I could invite you on whenever you really want to. I placed an order for The Dark Side of the Paranormal, and it has not come here yet. Amazon has screwed me for the last time. But the next time I will have read it and absorbed it.
Did you order
the paperback?
The paperback?
Yes. I'm not a Kindle. I can't read on a Kindle. I can read all day on a computer, but there's just something about the Kindle. My mind wanders.
So you haven't got it yet?
No. It's on its way. It was supposed to be here today.
No.
And it's just
well, see, I go through my books are through Ingram Spark, so they're printed through them and then distributed through Amazon. But
okay,
that's why it takes a little bit longer to get there.
Well, Amazon Prime is usually so quick, and
I know I have Amazon Prime.
And I thought it would be no problem, but this is one of the few times where I find with books for whatever reason take a little bit longer than
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Than
I'm with you there.
40 rolls of toilet paper.
I'll read a paperback before I'll read an ebook. So I'm with you that way. I want to feel the book. I want to be able to bend the page and go off somewhere and then come back to it.
Yeah, I also like the idea of being able to pass the book along. I'm a big pass along the book along kind of guy.
That's a good thing. Yeah, it is.
I try to be anyway. I'm also very greedy, and I don't like to share because I take care of my books, and I'll lend a book, and it's like, what did you do to this thing? Oh, come on. Jeez.
Been through the war. What'd you do?
Yeah, seriously. But no, and I can appreciate that too. Yeah. But well, thank you so much again, June. I'm going to put a link to all of your websites and everything, but if there's any websites you wanted to mention, mysticconnections.org, is that your main site?
That's the main site, and actually demonseer.com is like, if you put that in, it goes, that's where people come for help. And that actually feeds into Mystic Connection, so they're hooked together.
All right, great. Well,
But I'm going to England in September, and I'll be doing a live interview on the Unexplained Files with Howard.
Wow. I'll definitely be following you and checking that out. And I have a group on Facebook, but it's active and then it's not active. But I always like to promote everything I can on that. So
yeah, I'll send you the link to my YouTube page.
Great. I really would appreciate that. But if you could just stay on the line, I'm just going to stop the recording. But thank you so much. And again, the door is always open. You're more than welcome at any time.
Stay